The hidden treasures, right where you stand. Brought to you by Hyptoria. What if I told you that the greatest fortune of your life is sitting right beneath your feet? That while you're searching the world for opportunities, you're literally standing on a gold mine. This isn't just motivational talk. This is the true story of a Persian farmer who abandoned his land to search for diamonds across the globe, only to die in poverty, while the person who bought his farm discovered the richest diamond mine in human history in his own backyard. It's the story of a Pennsylvania man who sold his property for $800 to pursue oil riches in Canada, never knowing he'd been walking over millions of dollars in petroleum for 23 years. And it's the story of countless others who threw away fortunes because they couldn't see the treasures right where they stood. Over a century ago, Russell Conwell shared this powerful message with millions of people. Today, we're going to uncover these timeless principles and discover how they apply to your life right now. Because the truth is, your acres of diamonds aren't buried in some distant land. They're not hidden in complex strategies or exotic investments. They're right here, right where you are, waiting for you to open your eyes and see them. Are you ready to stop searching everywhere else and start digging where you stand? Then let's begin this journey together. The Persian farmer's fatal mistake. Picture this. In ancient Persia, there lived a farmer named Hafed, who had everything a man could want: fertile lands, abundant crops, and comfortable wealth. He was content with his life, until one day, a traveling priest shared a fascinating story about how diamonds were formed. The priest explained that diamonds were like frozen sunlight, created when the Earth's molten core cooled at just the right speed. He painted vivid pictures of unimaginable riches. How a handful of diamonds could buy entire kingdoms. How a diamond mine could place your children on royal thrones. That night, Hafed couldn't sleep. The seed of discontent had been planted. "I want diamonds," he declared. The farmer, who had been wealthy because he was content, suddenly became poor. Not because he'd lost anything, but because he was no longer satisfied with what he had. So what did Hafed do? He sold everything, left his family with neighbors, and set off on a worldwide quest for diamonds. He searched the mountains of the moon, wandered through Palestine, traveled across Europe. Years passed. His money ran out, his clothes became rags, and despair consumed him. Finally, standing on the shore in Barcelona, Spain, watching the waves crash against the rocks, Hafed could bear no more. He threw himself into the sea and drowned, never to be seen again. But here's where the story takes an incredible twist. The discovery that changed everything. Back home, the man who had bought Hafed's farm was watering his camel at the garden brook. As the camel drank, something caught his eye. A curious flash of light from the stream bed. He reached down and pulled out a black stone with an extraordinary sparkle that reflected all the colors of the rainbow. Thinking it was just a pretty rock, he placed it on his mantle and forgot about it. Days later, the same priest who had told Hafed about diamonds came to visit. The moment he walked into the house, he saw the stone and nearly fainted. "That's a diamond," he exclaimed. "Has Hafed returned?" "No," replied the new owner. "That's just a stone from our garden stream. But I know a diamond when I see one," insisted the priest. Together, they rushed to the stream and began sifting through the white sand. They found diamond after diamond, each more beautiful and valuable than the last. They had discovered the diamond mines of Golconda, the richest diamond mines in human history. The very land that Hafed had abandoned in search of diamonds was literally sitting on acres and acres of the world's most precious gems. The lesson that will change your life. Think about this profound irony. Hafed had spent his life walking over a diamond mine, only to die in poverty searching for what was already beneath his feet. Many of us are doing the exact same thing. We look at successful people in distant cities and think, if only I lived there, I could make it big. We dream of opportunities in faraway places, while ignoring the gold mine of possibilities right where we stand. The American who sold his gold mine. This isn't just an ancient tale. The same pattern repeats throughout history. In 1847, a man in California owned a ranch where he lived peacefully. When news broke of gold discoveries in Southern California, he got gold fever. He sold his ranch to Colonel Sutter and headed off to strike it rich. Colonel Sutter built a mill on the little stream that ran through the property. One day, his daughter brought some wet sand from the mill's raceway into the house to dry by the fire. As the sand fell through her fingers, a visitor noticed something extraordinary: the first glittering scales of real gold ever discovered in California. The man who had dreamed of finding gold had literally sold the source of California's gold rush and walked away forever. Meanwhile, the one-third owner of that very farm was later earning $20 in gold every 15 minutes of his life, sleeping or waking. The oil under his feet. Here's another true story that happened right here in Pennsylvania. A farmer decided to seek employment collecting oil in Canada, where petroleum had recently been discovered. Before leaving his farm, he wisely secured a job with his cousin up north. His cousin initially refused him, saying he knew nothing about the oil business. So this determined farmer spent months studying everything about oil, from its geological formation to its commercial extraction. When he finally convinced his cousin of his knowledge, he sold his Pennsylvania farm for exactly $833 and headed north. The new owner needed to set up a water system for his cattle. The previous owner had cleverly placed a plank across the stream at an angle, creating a barrier that pushed a dark, oily scum to one side so the cattle could drink clean water on the other side. That scum was crude oil. The farmer, who had become an expert on oil and sold his land, had been damming back a fortune in petroleum for 23 years. The Pennsylvania state geologist later declared that oil flow was worth over $100 million to the state. The city of Titusville now stands on that very farm. The silver professor's blindness. In Massachusetts, a brilliant young man studied mining and mineralogy at Yale. During his final year, he earned extra money tutoring struggling students. Upon graduation, the university offered him a prestigious professorship at $45 per week, but he scoffed at the offer. "What's $45 a week for someone with my brains?" he told his mother. "Let's go to California and stake gold claims. We'll be rich." Against his mother's gentle wisdom that it's just as well to be happy as it is to be rich, they sold their Massachusetts homestead and moved west, where he took a job with a copper mining company at $15 per week, less than a third of what he'd been offered back home. Meanwhile, the farmer who bought their old homestead was harvesting potatoes. As he carried a heavy basket through the front gate, it got stuck between the stone walls. Setting it down to free it, he noticed something unusual in the stone itself: a block of pure silver, 8 inches square. The mining professor, who wouldn't work for $45 a week, had literally sat on that silver stone every time he made deals about the property. He had rubbed against it, walked past it countless times, yet never recognized the fortune that was supporting him. The trout in his backyard. Sometimes our greatest discoveries come when we're forced to look closer at what we already have. Consider the unemployed shoemaker in Massachusetts, whose wife finally told him to get out of the house. Sitting dejectedly on an ash barrel in his backyard, he watched a trout flash up the little brook that ran through his property. On a whim, he caught the trout and sent it to Worcester. They sent back $5, a fortune for him at the time, and asked for more. But despite searching the entire stream from source to mouth, he and his wife couldn't find another trout. Consulting their minister, they learned about trout farming from Seth Green's book. They discovered that a single trout lays 3,600 eggs yearly and gains a quarter pound annually. In 4 years, one trout could produce 4 tons of fish worth 50 cents per pound. Right there in his own backyard, using nothing more than a coal sifter upstream and a window screen downstream, he began raising trout. He eventually became the highest authority on fish culture in the United States and held a prominent position on the U.S. Fish Commission. His wealth had been flowing through his backyard for 20 years. He never noticed until circumstances forced him to pay attention. The toy maker's discovery. A poor carpenter in Hingham, Massachusetts, also driven from his house by domestic pressure, sat whittling on the seashore. He carved a soaked shingle into a wooden chain, and when his children fought over it, he started making a second one. A neighbor, watching him work, asked, "Why don't you make toys if you can carve like that?" "I don't know what to make," the carpenter replied. "Why don't you ask your own children?" suggested the neighbor. "My children are different from other people's children," he protested, the eternal cry of every parent who thinks their situation is uniquely challenging. But the next morning, he did ask. His son wanted a wheelbarrow. His daughter wanted a doll's washstand, carriage, umbrella, and a dozen other things. Right there in his own house, his own children had given him the business plan that would make him the richest man in New England. Those unpainted Hingham toys, born from his kitchen table conversations, created a fortune. Why we miss our own diamonds. There's a pattern here that's both fascinating and tragic. In every case, these people possessed exactly what they were seeking, but they couldn't see it because they looked past the familiar. We assume that anything valuable must be exotic, distant, or difficult to obtain. The idea that our greatest opportunity might be mundane and close at hand seems impossible. They followed the crowd. When everyone talks about opportunities somewhere else, we automatically assume our location is inferior. But the statistics tell a different story. Most millionaires make their fortunes in small towns, not big cities. They didn't study their immediate environment. Hafed knew his land was good for farming, but never investigated what lay beneath. The Pennsylvania farmer understood oil formation in theory, but ignored the evidence in his own stream. They undervalued what they already had. Contentment became their enemy when they started comparing their situation to imaginary possibilities elsewhere. The real secret of wealth. Here's what every successful person understands. Wealth comes from recognizing and meeting genuine human needs, not from chasing fantasies about distant opportunities. But T. Stewart, once America's richest merchant, started with just $1.50. His first purchase was a disaster. He bought needles, thread, and buttons that nobody wanted, losing most of his investment immediately. But instead of blaming his circumstances or seeking opportunities elsewhere, Stewart learned a crucial lesson. Find out what people actually need, then supply that need. He went door to door, asking residents what they wanted to buy. Only then did he invest his remaining 62.5 cents. This simple principle, identify the demand, then meet it, built a $40 million fortune. The same principle works whether you're a lawyer, doctor, teacher, or entrepreneur. Success comes from understanding what the world needs and positioning yourself to provide it. The invention goldmine around you. Think you're not creative enough to invent something valuable? Consider this. The greatest inventions typically come from ordinary people who notice ordinary problems that everyone else ignores. John Jacob Astor discovered his fortune by sitting on a park bench watching women walk by. But he wasn't just people watching. He was studying their bonnets. He'd observe a woman's style, rush to his partner's millinery shop and say, "Put a bonnet exactly like this in the window. I just saw a lady who loves this style." Instead of filling his shop window with random inventory and hoping someone would buy, Astor proved demand existed before creating supply. He didn't sell hats that drove customers away. He sold exactly what he'd seen customers wanting. This same principle applies everywhere. In North Carolina, a bank cashier sitting behind a woman with a large hat heard the speaker say, "Will Ray, your wealth is too near to you. You're looking right over it." The banker joked to his friend, "Then my wealth must be in that hat." But then the speaker continued, "Wherever there is a human need, there's a greater fortune than any mind can provide." The banker took this seriously, designed a better hat pin than the one he'd been staring at all evening, and was soon offered $52,000 for his patent. The maple tree fortune. Sometimes our greatest assets are so obvious we become blind to them. A poor man in New England had been supported by his town's charity for 20 years. Above his humble cottage spread a magnificent maple tree that covered his home like a protective blessing. Every spring, he'd tap the tree for maple sap, collecting it in buckets. He made a modest amount of maple sugar each year. Nothing special, just the same dark, ordinary product everyone else made. One day, however, he managed to make sugar so light and crystalline that a visitor couldn't believe it was maple sugar. "Why don't you refine it this way and sell it as confectionery?" the visitor suggested. That simple question transformed everything. The man perfected his rock maple crystal process and patented it. Before that patent expired, he had earned $90,000 and built a mansion on the very spot where his humble cottage had stood. For 40 years, he had owned the tree that would make his fortune. The only thing that changed was his perspective on what was possible. Your personal diamond mine. Now comes the crucial question. What is your acres of diamonds? What opportunity are you walking over every day without recognizing its value? Maybe it's a skill you've always considered ordinary but others find remarkable. Perhaps it's a problem you've solved in your own life that thousands of other people are still struggling with. It could be knowledge you've gained through experience that others would pay to learn. The key is to stop looking over the fence at what others have and start examining what's already in your possession. Your background, your location, your current circumstances aren't obstacles to overcome. They're the raw materials for your success. The true definition of greatness. But here's something crucial to understand. The goal isn't just personal wealth. True greatness comes from blessing the community where you live right now. The person who can provide better schools, safer streets, stronger families, deeper faith, and more opportunities in their current location will be great anywhere. But someone who can't make a positive difference where they currently live will never be great anywhere else. Real success isn't about holding prestigious offices or accumulating titles. It's about doing great things with whatever resources you have, right where you are. Why most people stay poor. The tragedy is that most people have the raw materials for wealth, but lack the vision to see it. They think opportunity looks like something dramatic and obvious, when usually it appears ordinary and overlooked. We assume we need massive capital to start, but the most successful people often begin with almost nothing. What they have instead is acute observation. They notice what others miss. Genuine curiosity. They ask questions others don't think to ask. Practical focus. They solve real problems for real people. Local commitment. They bloom where they're planted, instead of constantly dreaming of transplanting. The power of simple solutions. The most valuable inventions are usually elegantly simple. Complex solutions require complex manufacturing, marketing, and maintenance. Simple solutions can be implemented quickly and adopted widely. Consider the unemployed man who sat by a stream and learned to farm trout, or the carpenter who asked his children what toys they wanted. These weren't sophisticated business strategies. They were common-sense responses to immediate observations. The greatest opportunities often hide in plain sight, disguised as everyday problems that everyone accepts as just the way things are. Your assignment for this week. Here's your challenge. For the next 7 days, become an opportunity detective in your own life. Ask yourself, what do people in my area complain about that I could solve? What skills do I have that others seem to lack? What problems have I solved that others are still struggling with? What needs do I see in my community that aren't being met? What resources do I already possess that I've been undervaluing? Don't look for the next great technological breakthrough. Look for simple improvements to ordinary situations. The person who figures out a better way to organize closets, teach children to read, or help neighbors connect with each other might be sitting on a fortune. The ultimate truth. Your acres of diamonds aren't buried in some distant land. They're not hidden in complex financial instruments or exotic investment opportunities. They're right where you are, in the form of problems you can solve, needs you can meet, and value you can create for the people around you. The question isn't whether opportunity exists in your current situation. The question is whether you have the wisdom to recognize it and the courage to act on it. Stop searching for your ship to come in. You're already standing on the dock, and the treasure is buried right beneath your feet. All you need to do is start digging where you are. Your greatest adventure isn't waiting for you somewhere else. It's waiting for you to open your eyes to the extraordinary possibilities in your perfectly ordinary life. The diamonds have been there all along. Now, it's time to find them.